Now we head into a business hour here in regards to the news hour, and we head to the international scene. Now, cybercrime is one of the top risk factors likely to jeopardize Africa's economy, especially at this time when the continent is transitioning to e-commerce under the Africa Continent Free Trade Area. That's according to the panelists at a book talk hosted by the Economic Commission for Africa. The book talk was jointly organized by the Economic Commission for Africa's Knowledge Management Section and the Information and Communications Technology Services Section in collaboration with the Communication Sections under the theme Dangers or Risks of Cybercrime to E-Commerce in Africa. Have a look at this report.
According to the panelists at the book talk, many domestic regulations on the internet are being enforced without paying due consideration to the nature of cyberspace, cybersecurity, and its relevance for e-commerce. They said that cybercrime has become a big issue in the world because of the emerging technology and high internet penetration on the continent. African governments should accept the standard cyber norms and international laws for responsible state behavior in cyberspace. Nena Ifenyi Ajufo, senior lecturer at the School of Law, Swansea University, UK, said cyber governance and e-commerce play a critical role in ensuring cyber security, and that the interface between cyber governance, cyber security, and economic visibility is one of the most complex policy challenges in the current day digital economy in Africa. Ifenyi said it is important that African countries ratify the Malabo Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection to fight the threats of the cybersecurity. The Malabo Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection, she noted, is one of the most elaborative conventions in the world on cybersecurity, so that African countries should ratify for it to be enforced. So far, only 10 African countries have ratified the Malabo Agreement. For it comes into force, at least 16 African countries should ratify it.
Now, the Malabo Convention on Cyber Security and Personal Data Protection is one of the most elaborate conventions in the world on cyber security. So African countries should definitely ratify it for it to be enforced on the continent. So far, only 10 African countries have ratified the Malabo Agreement. For it to come into force, at least 16 countries should ratify it. Clearly, as the prevailing cases of cybercrime increasingly are coming on board in Africa. So those are some of the questions you could definitely be saying. Why don't we, as Uganda, as well as ratify the Malabo Convention on Cyber Security and Personal Data Protection? All right, now moving on, the African Telecommunications Union has welcomed South Sudan becoming the 49th member following its official admission into the union through an announcement made in Nairobi, Kenya at the African Telecommunications Union headquarters. Now, South Sudan will be joining 48 other African countries at 54 ICT companies under the African Telecommunications Union umbrella. Have a look at this report.
The African Telecommunications Union has welcomed South Sudan becoming the 49th member following its official admission into the union through an announcement made in Nairobi, Kenya at the ATU headquarters. South Sudan will be joining 48 other African countries at 54 ICT companies under the ATU umbrella. As a specialized agency of the African Union in the field of telecommunications, or ICT, African Telecommunications Union represents its members' interest at global decision-making ICT conferences and provides a forum for stakeholders involved in ICT to formulate effective strategies to improve access to information infrastructure and service in the continent. When signing the membership agreement, South Sudan Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Ambassador Beatrice Kamisa, was joined by the Director General of the National Communications Authority of South Sudan, Engineer Napoleon Adoku Gai. both the African Telecommunication Union membership and now South Sudan will be expected to front a strong position, especially in rolling out initiatives to integrate regional markets, implementation of ICT projects, attract investment into ICT infrastructure, and build
And now, should we say congratulations and welcome aboard South Sudan to the Telecommunications Union in Africa, as we are tapping into a generation of digital spacing. Clearly, if African countries can't take charge, we will definitely be there in no time, and we'll definitely be tapping into e-commerce. All right, now moving on, still in Africa, however, ECOWAS has suspended Guinea after the coup. Now, West Africa's bloc ECOWAS decided to suspend Guinea following a recent coup in the country, as Burkinabe Foreign Minister Alpha Bari said after a virtual meeting crisis, and this was taking place on a virtual meeting through Zoom. Take a look at this.
ECOWAS has decided to suspend Guinea following a recent coup in the country, Burkinabe Foreign Minister Alpha Bari said on Wednesday after a virtual crisis summit. The Economic Community of West African States will also send a mediation mission to Guinea on Thursday, Bari told reporters in Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou. The move comes after Guinea Special Forces, led by Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, seized power on Sunday and arrested President Condé, sparking international condemnation. The 83-year-old became the first democratically elected president in 2010 and was re-elected in 2015. But last year, he pushed through a new constitution that allowed him to run for a third term in October 2020. The move sparked mass demonstrations in which dozens of protesters were killed. Condé won the election, but the political opposition maintained that the poll was a sham. Regional bloc ECOWAS convened an extraordinary virtual summit to discuss the turmoil in Guinea on Wednesday.
Now, the first ever president who was elected in Guinea in 2010 is the same man, the 83-year-old. In the names of Alpha Condé, the former president of Guinea, was arrested by the special forces that were led by Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya there in Guinea. Now, the 83-year-old became the first ever democratically elected president in 2010 and was re-elected in 2015. However, as they say, leadership is sweet in the Luganda in a Luganda relay that Entere Woma. So in 2020, he decided to push through a new constitution that allowed him to actually run for a third term in October 2020. So clearly, this did not go well with those in the forces, in the special forces. And later on in this particular year, 2021, the army, led by Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, decided to arrest the President Alpha Condé. Some of the footages that you've definitely been saying into that, sparking international condemnation of the coups that are coming up. It seems Guinea is not used to peaceful elections, if I am to put it in that way now. But last year, after he pushed it, the move has sparked off mass demonstrations in which dozens of protesters were killed. Condé, who won the elections, but the political opposition maintained that the poll was a sham. Now, the regional bloc ECOWAS convened an extraordinary virtual meeting summit to discuss the turmoil in Guinea on Wednesday. All right, now speaking of elections and speaking of what we do expect in other sectors, the European Union has pledged more support to Libya elections. Now, the European Union is actually ready to do more to support the organization of the elections scheduled in Libya in late December, in particular by supporting the reform of the security sector in that particular country. Have a look at this.
The European Union is ready to do more to support the organization of the elections scheduled in Libya in late December, in particular by supporting the reform of the security sector, assured on Wednesday in Tripoli the head of European diplomacy, Josep Borrell. The European Union has already provided a technical support to the High National Electoral Commission in Libya and ready to give more, Borrell said at a press conference with his Libyan counterpart, Nigella Al-Mogadishu. Brussels is willing to help the Libyan government reform the security sector, a sector that has disintegrated since the fall of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi's regime in 2011, giving away to militias and armed groups with shifting allegiances. after a ceasefire agreement between rival authorities in 2020, and full transitional government was installed under UN in early 2021 to lead the country to election scheduled for December 24th. But divisions have resurfaced, and the holding of the poll is becoming increasingly hypothetical in the absence of constitutional framework. There is no time to lose in approving the necessary legislation. Borrell continued urging Parliament to do its job.
Right now, for a country in Libya that has actually been under political instabilities following the death of their legendary leader in Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi in 2011, that is actually after his fall. After a ceasefire agreement between rival authorities in October 2020, a unified transitional government was installed under UN auspices in early 2021 to lead the country to elections that are being scheduled for December 24th. But divisions have resurfaced. That is actually holding of the poll is becoming increasingly hypothetical in the absence of a constitutional framework. There is no time to lose in approving the necessary legislation. Borrell did continue urging Parliament to do its job and take concrete steps as the European Union is set to help Libya's elections. Will Libya have peaceful elections this time around? We're yet to establish that and see more in regards to that story. And also, Kenya will also be deciding ahead. So clearly you could see African countries. Will we see elections peacefully held in African countries? We do await to assess that particular matter. Now that brings us to the end of our news hour here in regards to the foreign updates. We do return shortly. Keep it SMB.